What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me on another one. Today I want to talk to you about spinning wing decoys. If you should use them, how you should use them. We got a lot to talk about, so let's just get with it. So I started out by saying that I've been using spinning wing decoys basically since they come out. I got my first one when I was like 13, and that was just a couple of years after they come out on the market. So I've seen them when they were absolutely just magical. You can't even really put into words how effective they were. I've had a lot of experience with them, and I've killed a lot of ducks over them, and I've killed a lot of ducks without them. So let's just start off with a big question. Should you use spinning wing decoys? Well, like most things in life, that's a complicated answer. There's a lot of factors that go into how well spinning wing decoys work. So I'll break down just a few things to consider on whether you should use one or not, and then I'll kind of break down how I use them and what I've noticed over the years and what I've seen work to make them more effective. So spinners are kind of unique to the waterfowling world. There's nothing that really compares them as far as how well they work in certain areas and how well they don't in others. In certain situations they do so good, in certain situations they're not the greatest. I'm really interested to hear what your experience has been with spinners. Let me know down in the comments, have you had good luck, bad luck? What are some things you've learned using them over the years? Because I like to hear good tips too. It seems the further north you are in the flyway, Canada, the Dakotas, a lot of the places that hunt dry fields, they seem to work a lot better than in the south. That also kind of goes hand in hand with the time of season it is. I've never really dry field hunted, but the guys that I've talked to, they swear by the spinners. From what I've gathered, they're almost a must-have. And just in my experience and everywhere I've hunted, they definitely seem to get less effective later in the season. Early season, they work great. Late season, like many other things, including calling and decoys in general, ducks seem to shy off of them more. Another thing to keep in mind with spinners is that they cover up a lot of mistakes. For beginners or guys that are newer to the sport, spinners no doubt attract ducks, and they will put you in a good situation, but they don't always put you in the best situation, and I'll talk more about that later. But what I mean is, spinners can cover up bad calling, they can cover up bad decoy placement, they can cover up a lot just to get the ducks in range and to get the ducks at least looking at you. So that's something to keep in mind if you're newer to the sport and you're trying to decide if you should use spinners or not. They can definitely help in a lot of situations, especially when you may not be as good or experienced in other areas of duck hunting. And that's not to say that experienced guys shouldn't use them. I'm just saying spinners can cover up a lot of mistakes for all hunters. Now, with that said, on if you should use spinners or not, I kind of give you my take on it, how I use spinners and just my opinion on them. Everybody's got an opinion. This one's mine. If I'm in a place where I can use them, I almost always carry them, and I always start out with them. They're the first adjustment that I make in the decoy spread, and they're usually the biggest, as in they have the most impact. Whether that be moving it from one side of the spread to the other, or putting it more in cover, or just taking it up all together, it's the first thing I mess with, and it usually has the biggest impact as far as how the ducks react to it. So yes, I do believe in using them. I think they work great, but I usually pull them pretty quickly. Another thing that determines on whether I'm going to use a spinner or not is kind of where I'm at and what my goals are. I just don't believe in using spinners when you're hunting big groups of mallards. Being from Arkansas, for years we used spinners on public ground, and they recently banned spinning wing decoys just a few years ago. So I've seen the difference between using them and not using them, and it just seems that our big group ratio skyrocketed when we quit using them, even on teal and gadwall and everything. We just seem to do a lot better at actually putting the ducks all the way on the water without spinning wing decoys. Now, they are great at getting them to work. I like spinners that you can turn on for a few seconds and then they shut off, or spinners that have a remote that once I have the ducks working and they're starting to get in there tight, I can turn it off. I think the ducks react better to it when you're more trying to imitate ducks that are just stretching their wings. If you look at live ducks on the water, the first thing you see, it looks like there's a bunch of little spinning wing decoys out there flashing every few seconds. If you study ducks at all, that stands out big time, which is why they're so effective. However, what you don't see is something just constantly flashing out there in one spot. I just think ducks can key in on that. So bottom line on what I'm trying to do with my spinning wing decoys typically is I want it to either look like duck stretching, or I want the ability to turn the decoy off once I have the ducks getting in there tight. I've just had a lot more success landing big groups of mallards without spinning wing decoys. It's kind of a double-edged sword sword, because you'll get ducks that you never would have got without it, but once they get in there, you know, it messes them up. So it's kind of like, what do? You know, we try to compensate for that getting ability by loud calling, aggressive calling with a lot of people. That's very effective. So with that said, I'll give you just a few tips and just some observations that I've noticed using them over time. Again, like I've said before, there are no absolute with ducks. They follow general rules, but ducks break rules all the time. So nothing, you know, don't get stuck on this is this way every single time. I've seen to have had much better luck using spinners on sunny days versus cloudy, and I've had a lot of other people say that as well. Not to say that I hadn't killed a pile of them over spinners on cloudy days, it's just it seems that they work better on sunny days. I'm sure it has something to do with the kind of flash it's putting off when there's no sun. On that same note, I've also seemed to have had better luck with them early in the day versus later, as in right at shooting light. It just seems it gives the duck something to kind of key in on when it's not really light yet, and just as later as it gets, the much more apt I am to pull it out of the spread. You know, as soon as I see any kind of hesitation from the ducks wanting to finish, after I check to see if we're hit or not, because that's the most important thing, I'm going to go adjust the spinner. Another thing I've had good success doing over the years is moving the spinner further off the spread, just getting it away from the main spread and kind of putting it on the end of the decoys and putting a lot of stationary decoys in between it and the landing zone. It just seems to make the ducks a little more comfortable later in the year. You know, early in the year, we put the spinner right where we want the ducks to land, because they're usually going to land right on it. But later in the year, we back it off further and further until, you know, we think that we're at the right distance and the ducks aren't really acting squirrely on it. Also, something that I know works really well with spinners is putting them in thick cover. That was kind of the deal here in Arkansas, hunting the timber. You know, it's thick branches. The ducks can't really see in there. People would just put out 10 or 12 mojos and, you know, it just looked really good. The timber would just break the flash up and the ducks couldn't really see in there. All they could see is glimpses of flashes here and there. And it was just really effective at pulling big groups of ducks in the timber. Well, that also works, you know, in other types of cover too. It doesn't have to be timber, whether it be corn or cattails or whatever. Putting the spinner, especially later in the year, in thicker cover and using multiple spinners can be really effective. I typically don't like having a lot of constant spinners in open water, but when you get in that thicker stuff, it seems to be really effective. So let's talk about brands for a second. In the South, Mojo is king. That's what pretty much everyone uses down here. That's what I've always used. I've known some people that had Lucky Duck and stuff, and most of them didn't really have great things to say about it.
If I had to buy them again, I would buy the Mojos.
The one time I hunted around one, it quit blowing in 15-mile-an-hour winds. They may be great. I don't really know. I'm just saying I've not heard or seen good things about them. I'm really excited about the new Avian X spinner that's supposed to be coming out this fall. I'm hoping to get my hands on that and give it a shot, just because of what they say about it, how it spins a little differently, and just some different things about it. I'm kind of pumped for it. For me, I really like Mojo. We've had no problems with them. We have had problems out of the baby Mojos. They don't seem to be made near as durable or as good as the more higher versions. But we have beat the mess out of them things, and they have held up. I even shot one, the first one I ever got, shot it on the first day. The bottom line on whether you should use spinners or not, it's better to have it and not need it than it is to need it and not have it. You can always pull it out of the decoy spread. I highly recommend at least trying it. Are they as effective as they used to be? Absolutely not. I don't think anything that I could think of in the world of duck hunting will ever be as effective as the first few years of spinners. If you want to see the biggest mistake I see new duck callers make, click this video right here. If you want to see the strategy I use for using duck decoys, click this video. Thanks for joining me today. I love you. Lord willing, I'll catch you next time right here on Chasing Green.